My name is Sylvia Paris Drummond. I'm the CEO for the Delmore Daye Learning Institute. The Viola Desmond Community Talks series carries on Viola's legacy of entrepreneurship, education, and social action, inspiring the leaders in all of us.
The pardon is the core of everything that came after. I was really surprised when I sit here and I'm talking to you, and I feel it over that. After that pardon, the tears are welling in my eyes. After that pardon, all these accolades came, and I'm surrounded by them. And I wish my mom was here, my dad, but anyway, and Viola herself. But it's amazing. I'm talking to you, and I can feel the welling up of amazement, if that can be said, because there's so many things have come along with this pardon, with Viola and her story.
Hello and welcome to the Delmore Daye Learning Institute's Viola Desmond Community Talk series. I'm your host, Dr. Kesa Monroe Anderson, and today we will be speaking with African Nova Scotian beauty entrepreneur Samantha Dixon Slawter. But first, we'll hear from some voices to provide us with some context around Viola Desmond's justice and entrepreneurship story.
It's clear that many people do not understand the difference of a free pardon and a regular pardon.
Right.
And in that sense, every time you hear somebody say Viola Desmond was pardoned, you have to stop them and say, no, she received a free pardon, because the free pardon is only granted to people who are innocent. And a regular pardon, is somebody who's committed a crime, guilty, served their time, now they're going to have a pardon. So, and in some ways, it's kind of good when they get that confusion, because it forces you to go and do some research and find out more, and then the conversation starts.
That's right.
But going on it happened on April the 15th, 2010. That was clearly a very historic day. And this is a book that was written by Viola's sister.
Yes.
And in here, at the appendix, they added in here the apology and a full explanation of the royal prerogative of mercy. They have the words that were used by Percy Paris, the words used by Ross Landry, who was the Minister of Justice, and then Darrell Dexter himself. So Ross Landry said that Mrs. Desmond was an innocent woman. In 1946, the Crown made an error. Now the Crown, we're talking the prosecutor's office, right? And the time has come to right the wrong. So there you go. And this was a clear case of racism that should have never occurred. And the time had come to do something about it. Now that was just a bit of piece of what he had to say. Yes. And then Minister Paris, he said, a law that at that time was common public policy, a law that stated without words but with opinions and with attitudes that she and her brothers and her sisters of African descent belonged to a group of less thans. Okay? Percy Paris said that. And then he said that Viola Desmond dared to challenge the status quo. She refused to stay silent. She dared to ask questions and dared the greater community to accept her and all men and all women of African descent as equals.
I remember that day very well. And I think during my speech, and I realized early in my term in politics that the impact of your words is around the delivery. And those words, as you speak, or as I was speaking, those words were coming from the heart. And I could excuse me, I could feel myself even now. When I think of Viola Desmond and some of the things that took place during my term in politics, it comes straight from the heart. There were so many things that happened, and the Viola Desmond was one of the highlights of my career, and I was so happy to have played a role in the province and NDP government, recognizing the injustice that was done to Viola Desmond, and more importantly, wasn't going to stand by in that history as dictated by non-blacks, how it was going to impact our society, in particular reference with the African Nova Scotian community. Probably more important, the Viola Desmond free pardon came at a time in my life, like so many other things that happened in my life. It renewed my faith in the word hope, and how in the African Nova Scotian community, without holding on to that value of hope, is that it's very, very difficult to survive in the Canadian society.
She was a woman from way back in that time. You would not be expecting a Black person to have all of the talents and intelligence and the vision that she had. People see her as an activist, but she was beyond that. She was an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur. She was also an educator, a successful educator. Yeah. She was also, and I was reading about her, she also had a bit to do with real estate. Wow. So this is interesting, because this is a woman that was well-rounded. Yes. And what happened to her at the theater, that took courage to say that, no, I want to sit here because I have poor eyesight. I want to sit closer to the screen. And then she's dragged out and put into jail. So we need to listen to that story, know who she is, going back to 1946, and then look at 2020 and say, have things changed?
This is my thought. I think that up until 2010, up until the free pardon, I think Viola Desmond was somewhat of a secret. I think she was known in the Black community, but I think what happened with the free pardoning by the government of the day is that put her front and center. She became newsworthy internationally, and I think as a result of that act, I think hers, and I don't want to use the word status, but her story has gained so much momentum over the years, the recent years, the last 10 years. And I think it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. I think it's out in the open now. It's been recognized by the provincial government that there was a grave era here, and it's just going to continue to grow from there. The $10 bill is only a small sampling of where she will be 50 and 100 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Has she influenced others? I would say she actually did.
Yes.
A very close friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, at a young age, at 59, Beverly Masco. Beverly Masco was born in Fall River, and she moved off to Toronto probably I don't know, when she was in 17 or 18, something like that. So she was living in Toronto for all those years, and the first time I heard Viola's name was from Beverly Masco.
Okay.
And I lived in Ontario in the late 90s, And it was Beverly who told me about that. And I met Beverly here when she was brought here to do a speech, and I was on the same agenda. And as soon as we met, we became friends. And when she told me about Viola Desmond, and that was incredible, and you should see how successful Beverly was. And I talk about Beverly in my book, and Beverly was just, her personality was almost very similar to Viola's, okay? Beverly had friends all over. She was on numerous boards, and if Viola had continued with her, she would have ended up, I'm convinced, sitting on boards as well. It just was because that's what happened to Madam J.C. Walker. And so, and also Bev was able to have her own businesses too. I mean, besides the beauty business, but she had that influence. So I think that Viola can still have that influence on people right now.
Absolutely.
And she does on various people. Miss Williams, her name is Christian Williams, and she's the CEO of the Junior Chamber, right? And so she's the one that recommended that Viola be inducted into the Business Hall of Fame, which is important because when she first saw Viola's portrait in Government House, she was mesmerized by her.
I reflect back on the decision to learn about Viola. It didn't appear at first as though I was intentionally selecting her out of a group of women I wanted to study. I came upon her in your former residence, actually, at Government House, when I was at a holiday reception. It was just past the point where you had left office. But I came upon her portrait, which was hanging in the home, and it's a beautiful home, as you well know. But her portrait stood out to me, not the least of which because she was a woman, but she was a woman of color in this, broad environment that was, quite frankly, quite masculine and quite white. So that is initially what triggered my interest to know a little bit more about her. And as I started to research and understand what she went through, and I learned about the pardon that you were responsible for, and I'm so very grateful that she's now proclaimed innocent, because she indeed was never guilty of anything. I also learned that she was this extraordinary entrepreneur. And my research is usually historical in nature. I'm interested in uncovering women who've been overlooked. And I felt that this was an opportunity not only to include a brilliant, strong woman, but a woman of color in Canada, where arguably the history of management has been an American project. And it's been a project that's really been quite infused by patriarchy, by colonialism, and by gender. So the opportunity to give Viola a broader level of recognition so that she could not only be seen as this remarkable civil rights leader, but also as an industry building entrepreneur. And that's really what continued to drive my interest in writing about her and researching her. I quite frankly became smitten with her. She's just so incredible. She's very inspiring. And I felt if I could be inspired by her, certainly others would want to too. And in that developed in me a feeling of responsibility to bring this aspect of her life to the forefront. And I remember having a conversation with her sister, Wanda Robson, and this was just prior to me submitting a nomination for her to be inducted in the Business Hall of Fame, going back 4 years ago now. And she even at that point said to me that she was just starting to understand that Viola was this great entrepreneur, because even she didn't see it as easily and as significantly as it was, the requirements to be inducted in the Business Hall of Fame. And I think now that we understand Viola's entrepreneurial identity, it's a lot easier for us to make sense of it. But at the time, the committees and the broader community, they couldn't wrap their heads around it. But to be considered for the Nova Scotia Business Hall of Fame, candidates must fulfill the following criteria. They must be recognized by his or her business or profession as having made an outstanding contribution to the success of the business or profession. As we know, Viola introduced this new industry in Canada. She was an industry builder, an industry leader. You must have demonstrated in his or her business career entrepreneurial spirit and have a record of outstanding entrepreneurial achievements. So Viola not only built a single business, she actually built 3 businesses. You know, she went on to do mail order deliveries. She made all of her own products. She started a school. She was extremely entrepreneurial. And not only that, but she actually made other entrepreneurs, because the women who attended her school also went on to create businesses of their own. You must have demonstrated effective leadership, not only within his or her business, but within the community. And we know that Viola was a community leader. We know that her store actually was a gathering place for women and for people of the community. We know that she was generous beyond measure in terms of the services that she provided for free. And finally, it says to be considered, and this is my favorite because this one's really obvious, to be considered a role model for future generations of entrepreneurs and business leaders, as well as others in business. And we know that there are people in business right now that credit the inspiration to become entrepreneurs to Viola. And I think that is just a marvelous legacy of her success.
Viola influences people. And now she's on the $10 bill. She'll be talked about forever. And that's what's important.
Very. Thank you very much again for joining us for the second episode of the Delmore Buddy Daye Learning Institute's Viola Desmond Community Talks. Today, it is my esteemed privilege to welcome to the show 35-year veteran in the Black beauty culture industry, beautician, hairdresser, Samantha Dixon Slawter, owner and proprietor of Styles by SD. Samantha is also the recipient most recently of the 2020 Gloria Fisher Business Person of the Year Award. Samantha, congratulations and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bless the Lord. Thanks for inviting me.
Samantha, when I think about the spirit of Viola Desmond, you are an entrepreneur who exudes the spirit, that entrepreneurship spirit, that leadership spirit, that community-mindedness spirit of Viola Desmond. Could you tell us what is it about Viola Desmond that's drawn you to her?
See, if I believed in reincarnation, you know she died the year I was born.
Wow, no.
I'd say it was because, but I don't believe in reincarnation. So one of the reasons why I actually am drawn to Viola Desmond is because of an introduction I got from one of her first students, one of her first graduates, and that was Verna Skinner. And when she introduced me to Viola Desmond, she introduced me to a new world.
Could you tell us maybe some of what Verna Skinner shared with you?
Well, she shared with me that she was one of the first students or graduates. She shared with me the importance of what Viola Desmond was doing. One thing that she noted was that Viola Desmond changed the culture of Nova Scotia. She changed the culture of the community. She made it so that we were being cared for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is very important when we think about the role of hairdressers, beauticians. It's much more than only doing hair, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Could you tell us more about how beauticians care for the community?
We care for the community in so many different ways. And I guess the thing about in your introduction, you talked about the spirit of Viola Desmond. The spirit of Black beauty is something that's very mystical. Black hair is mystical. And when you speak on taking care of the community, it's really, you're taking care of them physically, you're taking care of them emotionally, and in a way, you're taking care of them spiritually. Because black hair is spiritual. It's mystical.
Thank you. That's so poignant when I think about the significance of the work of Viola Desmond and the fact that you are carrying on that legacy. It is very important that we shine a light on individuals such as yourself in the black community that continue to care for and nurture us through your business and through your leadership and through your community work. I'm reflecting, Samantha, on that day in 2018 when the Viola, you know the Viola, the $10 bill, with Viola Desmond's image, when that was unveiled and released into circulation all across Canada. What a day that was. It was an exhilarating time. It was a glorious time, across Canada, but of course, specifically for the African Nova Scotian community. It was an exciting time for us. As you reflect on that time, and I did bring one of my 10s, one of my Violas, as you reflect on that time, Samantha, please tell us what is the significance of Viola Desmond being on this $10 note to you?
For me as a beautician?
Yes, as a beautician, of course.
So to me, it's important because she is a hairdresser. So it's a black hairdresser on the money.
Yes, yes. So a black woman, but a black woman who served
As a hairdresser. She's a hairdresser.
Absolutely.
And she's an educator.
Yes.
She's an entrepreneur. But first and foremost, what really touched me is that she's a hairdresser on the money.
And what does that mean, a hairdresser on the money? What does that mean for you?
Really, Viola Desmond was one of the first black beauty advocates. I actually identify myself as a black beauty advocate now. I've been, one of the things that I should say too is that this has been for me, when I was introduced to Viola Desmond, it was almost 35 years ago. So for me too, what it propelled me to do is to work on pretty much taking up a cross, pretty much, and work on delivering better hair services to the community, but also wanting to do more. And one of the things that I wanted to do and see in the community is a black beauty hairdressing school. Education is important, but a lot of the education that we get in the beauty industry, in the black community, is passed down. And really that's, it's a type of spirituality. Again, hairdressing is physical, so you can touch it, you can see it. And hairdressing is mystical, but also it's emotional.
Yes.
And so we're meeting an emotional need, we're meeting a physical need, and pretty much we are meeting a spiritual need. Although we don't, we can't touch it, and we don't know what's next. But it all adds up to the education of our people. And we need to actually own that. It's something that we need to own as a people. So in doing that, in saying that, one of the things that I wrote down pretty much 20 years ago was that, about 20 years ago, was that I wanted to do a Viola Desmond project. One of the project and actually my business, Styles by SD, actually work hand in hand. Because with Styles by SD, I wanted to do a full service salon. I also wanted to do a school, offer training and a school, and also see the people that I trained open up their own business.
Yes.
And that was Viola, that's what she did. That's actually what she did. So she actually, she taught, her students were from different areas of the community, meaning, someone might have been from, I think there was one of her students opened up a salon in Cherry Brook, one in her home, mind you, but professional anyways, and one of them opened up a salon in her home in Lucasville. And actually, I have her obituary, and she's noted as being a professional hairdresser. And there's so much more I could say.
Yes, yes.
So, and we'd be all here all day.
But you know what, Samantha, you're right on in terms of the history and how important the history of black hair is in Nova Scotia for black people, for African Nova Scotians, and for all people. The theme for African Heritage Month, we're in it, it's February, it's African Heritage Month, and the theme selected for this year is Black History Matters. Listen, learn, share, and act. And you know, like Viola Desmond, you are so much more than a hairdresser. You are a black historian. You are a keeper of the culture of black hair and the stories of black hair in this province, and I believe throughout Canada. In fact, over the years, you have been compiling history. You just shared some of it with us on the black hair story and what you have coined the Black Heritage, HAIR-ITAGE of Nova Scotia. So could you please share with us some more of that history on the Black heritage story of Nova Scotia?
Oh, actually, can I read the poem?
Certainly.
We have. I actually compiled the poem years ago. And it's called I Am the Black Hair Story. Not because of who I am or what I know. I am the Black Hair Story because of who I am known by and who I know of. I know my mother, who offered hair services to the black community in North Preston. There are many others that offered services to the black community before there was licensed stylists and beauty salons in different communities. Let me share with you who I know of. I know of Viola Desmond. Mrs. Desmond operated the first and only black hair school in the 1940s. I know of Kramer Downey and Jack Wungus. These gentlemen offered services and products to the community when no one else cared to make black hair care and product services accessible to the black consumer. We had to get them the best way we knew how. I know of Mona Downey, who co-founded Soul Clippers Limited, which today is the longest surviving black-owned and operated hair salon in Nova Scotia. I know Barbara Bowen. Mrs. Bowen was the first black director of the Nova Scotia Hairdressing Association. I know Beverly Maskell of Nova Scotia, who owned and operated the largest black beauty supply distributor in Ontario, a business she built from scratch out of the trunk of her car. I know Natharine Willis. Miss Willis was the first black person with a master instructor's license, and that's the highest license you can get from the association. I know Joan Dixon, Verna Williams, David Bailey, Joyce Downey. All of them served the community. I know of Verna Skinner. Mrs. Skinner was one of the first graduates of Viola Desmond School of Beauty. Mrs. Skinner shared with me the skills of curling with the Mercel iron. I still own them, and I actually should have brought them, which was a gift to me. I know of Mrs. Lillian Patterson. She was known as Mrs. P. She was trained in the United States and came home to Halifax to practice her craft. Mrs. P owned and operated her own salon. And Mrs. P actually noted that Viola Desmond was the best hairdresser of her time. And Mrs. P was actually a good hairdresser herself. There are many others who I could mention, but we cannot talk about the black hair story without mentioning our American pioneers also. The likes of Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Malone. And everyone has a hair story.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Samantha. Black heritage, HAIR, itage, is very important. Our black hair story is Very important. And right after this commercial break, we will be right back to learn more about it. Welcome back to the second episode of the Delmore Buddy Daye Learning Institute's Viola Desmond Community Talks. We're speaking with beauty culturalist Samantha Dixon Slawter tonight, and we're going to learn more from Samantha about the importance of our Black heritage, about our hair stories. And right before the break, we were talking about some very important history about persons in Nova Scotia, Black women in Nova Scotia, who were trailblazers, who many of them were inspired by Viola Desmond. Many of them sat under the tutelage of Viola Desmond. And there were others who came after her, who saw Viola Desmond as a mentor, as does Samantha Dixon Slawter. Samantha, when I reflect on the story, the poem that you read just before the break, I reflect on a concept called other mothering that was actually shared by a number of Black women from Nova Scotia who were social workers, and they wrote an article concerning other mothering and the importance of women who are outside of our bloodlines, particularly nurturing and supporting the work of other women, the development of other women. And I think about the importance of that in the Black hair story. You've talked about the importance of honoring your past. You've honored Viola Desmond, your store, the walls in your store honor Viola Desmond, events that you have through Styles by SD and the Black Beauty Culture Association, they always honor Viola Desmond. And you also honor others who've come before you in the beauty industry. Samantha, I'd like to speak with you right now about the role that your family has played in shaping you into the entrepreneur that you are today. Could you tell us a bit about your family influence?
Okay. First, I'd actually like to talk about the privilege of having the family I did. Like, I have a dad that actually took care of me, period. Mm-hmm. He took care of my family as well as his extended family. Mm-hmm. He was a hardworking man. He was hardworking. He actually worked us. We didn't know we were poor. He worked us into middle class. So he worked on a job, and then he worked on his own job, meaning he owned a firm, and then he went and worked on someone else's job. And with the help of my mother, because my mother helped out too. My mother was a day worker, and she worked pretty much every day. And he would actually tell her she didn't have to.
Mm-hmm. And you also come from a long line of hairdressers. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so my, historically, my great-grandfather had the first, and I got that from a historian from North Preston, Josephine Johnson. Okay. I'm sure that you've heard of her.
Yes,
so she actually shared with me that my great-grandfather had the first straightening comb in North Preston. So everyone would go and get their hair done there. Mm-hmm. My mother was a hairdresser. She did hair in the community and offered services to people in the community. And my uncle and aunts both owned and operated hair salons in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And was that a part of the story of how you got your start?
Yes, so I actually got my hairdressing license through my aunt and uncle.
Awesome, awesome. Viola also had a firm grasp on the importance of beauty entrepreneurship to African Nova Scotian communities in terms of her salon and her beauty products, as well as her beauty school. And I believe she validated for us Black beauty culture as a viable and a lucrative career for Black women, particularly where Black women could become entrepreneurs and also contribute to the well-being and the health and the wealth of African Nova Scotian communities. You do the same, Samantha, in your work. As we think about Viola's contributions, we think about the significance of Black women's entrepreneurship. How does that fit into your story? What would be the significance of Black women's entrepreneurship to you?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, you know, even before I go on to some of the history of entrepreneurs in my family, females, I want to say that I have a husband who actually believed in me. Mm-hmm. My salon actually closed in 2000, and I reopened it a little while after with the help of my husband. Mm-hmm. And so it's always nice to have someone that believes in you.
Yes, absolutely.
Now to go back to women entrepreneurs, me being one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's why you're here.
The history of entrepreneurship in my family. So I actually come by this virtuously from my grandparents. All of my grandparents and great-grandparents were entrepreneurs. As we know, we had to be entrepreneurs. Black people had to be entrepreneurial to survive here in Nova Scotia.
That's right.
My great-grandmothers were, well, one of them anyways, in particular, was a crafter. And she actually seasonally did crafting. So when, in the spring, she made bouquets of mayflowers, which is the Nova Scotian flower. In the winter, she made wreaths. And we actually helped her sell them. So that's important to me, and that's part of my entrepreneurial history.
And we don't often celebrate those women, do we? We need to pay more attention to the significance of the work that the grandmothers who also introduced the work to the grandchildren. And you told me about how your grandmother would also sell blueberries in the market, and you would participate in the picking of blueberries, and the importance of that to survival and to the health and the well-being of family in the Black community, as well as even beyond, you know, supplying to the wider community. What about others in the beauty industry? When we think about women entrepreneurs, Black women entrepreneurs, what's the significance of that when we reflect on Viola Desmond's legacy?
So with that, you know, in the Black community, a lot of times there wasn't a whole lot of money changing hands. So our entrepreneurship too laid out some rules in reciprocity. Because if I did something for you, you did it for me. Right. So although the money didn't change hands, there was some reward. Now in the 1900s, though, there's a story that was shared with me about a hairdresser, Lena Halfkenny Lucas, who actually started a salon in the 1904. Wow. So that was like early on.
Yes.
And she owned and operated a salon. She owned and operated a salon that catered to, I suppose, everyone. She made wigs. And I mean, wigs are being popular now, but she was making them back then. One of the things that we've actually done is we've actually offered her family an award in her name.
Some refer to you as a Black beauty advocate, and you have come to own that title yourself as well. What are some ways you have kept Viola Desmond's legacy alive in the work you've been doing, not only through your salon, Styles by SD, but also through the Black Beauty Culture Association, which has been in existence for 4 years now, and a new and up-and-coming Crown of Beauty Institute and Association? Tell us why these initiatives are so important.
Well, again, I do believe that it's a calling on my life, and it's actually, I believe, one of the promises of God for me to be doing this and to be doing this work. And I'm trying to work it out. Like, one of the things that the Black Beauty Culture Association does do is the Black Hair Story in February. We do this year we're actually doing it with the McPhee Center. We're doing a youth, the Black Hair Story.
Awesome.
We also do in June, in May or June, we usually have a event called the Black Heritage of Nova Scotia, which we haven't been able to do because of these presidential times.
Yes.
At the Black Heritage in Nova Scotia, we actually give out awards. Some of them have been named after Viola Desmond and her proteges. And we actually have a new one this year, which will be named after Lena Kenny Lucas, who I spoke about earlier.
And that's awesome. And when you say we, you're talking about the Black Beauty Culture Association?
The Black Beauty Culture
Gives
Association,
this
yes.
award. And what about the Viola Desmond project? You've told me about a special project that you're working on.
So we've been trying to look for funding for the Viola Desmond project, which is, again, part of what I've been doing, like wanting to do Black beauty training in the salon, in the schools, or Black beauty training in the community, and allowing the trainee or the participant to open up a salon, so to become entrepreneurs. So we're actually hoping that we can or will be able to do that venture and receive the funding.
And what you're aiming to do, Samantha, is what Viola Desmond did so many years ago. We think about the fact that, she is on the $10 bill, but we're still fighting. You were talking earlier about the fact that in Nova Scotia, African Nova Scotians have to be constantly fighting and wearing our gloves, or fighting gloves. And we know that we're fighting
Putting them on and taking them off.
That's right. We're fighting systemic racism. And having Viola Desmond on the $10 bill, when I reflect on the fact that there's still barriers to economic prosperity for Black women and Black people in general that still need to be broken down, when you think about the fact that Viola Desmond owned her school in the 1930s, and we're now in 2021, some 90 years later, and we don't have a beauty school. We haven't had one since Viola's school that offers specialty training in Black hair. How much have we progressed since then?
That's a hard question to answer, because when we talk about the phoenixing and the spirituality of Black hair, we are still here. Like, if we go back 400 years, remember, beauty was actually ebbed from our nature. We actually weren't even considered people.
Right.
So when we talk about regression, when we talk about regression here in Nova Scotia, we can actually go back to slavery. So we don't have a whole lot of evidence of us being cared for or being considered
Human.
the people that we are.
That's right.
So right now, like I said, and again, like when I talk about the Viola Desmond project, it's actually a way for us as a people to own Black beauty culture, to own the education of it, to own it as a part of the economy of the Black community. And hopefully we can, again, get the funding.
So 2021, here we are. We certainly know that the experiences that we have in 2021, what we're experiencing now is connected to the legacy of slavery. Absolutely. It is definitely connected to the fact that Black people were not seen as human. And in many ways, we're still treated in inhumane ways. And specifically when we talk about Black beauty, Black hair products, Black hair care services, Black hair care education, how far have we come? I just want to push you a little further. Have we advanced? Are we where we were when?
We've actually regressed. There was a segment on, I think it was on CTV, where I talked about the Black beauty culture. And knowing the history of Viola Desmond, and then knowing the fight that we're fighting now, one of the anchors made a note to say, oh my goodness, it's hard to believe that we've regressed.
When I think about the poem that you read earlier, it has so much rich history in that poem that we need to share with ourselves, with each other, and our youth. Our youth need to know what are the contributions of these Black women who have come before us and how they've paved the way for us. Now, Samantha, I am sure that when I think about your community work, and you talked about your father's work in the community, how he would always contribute to the well-being of the community as well as his own family, and you shared with me, and we talked earlier about the way that he cared for community through his entrepreneurship. And Viola Desmond did the same thing. She had a caring spirit and a caring heart. She was conscientious. She was always thinking and concerned about how to better her community. And I can't help but connect your spirit of community with that of Viola Desmond, who always poured out her love and her dedication to her community through her business, her products, and her school. Now, some refer to you as the Black beauty advocate, and you mentioned earlier on in the show that you also have come to accept and to name yourself and identify yourself as a Black beauty advocate. What are some of the ways that you have kept Viola Desmond's legacy alive in the work that you do? And when I speak about the work that you do, I'm talking about your business, the Styles by SD salon, also other initiatives including the Black Beauty Culture Association, which has been running for 4 years now, and finally, the Crown of Beauty Institute and Association. Why are these initiatives so important when it comes to keeping Viola Desmond's legacy alive?
Now, do you mind if I read something, though?
No problem, you go ahead.
Okay, so the two initiatives are very important. Again, like I said, like 20 years ago, I wanted to be able to open up a hair salon and move into opening up a school and then move into offering or helping those students to actually open up their own businesses. And with the Black Beauty Culture Association and hopefully with the Crown of Beauty Institute and Association, we can do that.
Yes.
So first off, in reading this, I'm actually going to read from kind of the paper. Is that okay? Yes. I want to thank you guys for actually inviting me to do this. The community talks, the Viola Desmond community talk, I think is very important. The community is very important to me. I am the first president of the Black Beauty Culture Association, and I am thankful to all our members who have walked into this fight with me. And that's what Black people need to understand, is that Black Nova Scotians actually, they always got to put their gloves on. We're always putting on our gloves. Viola Desmond, I believe, had on her gloves.
Yes, she did.
And I think when she left Nova Scotia, I think she was tired of fighting. I really do. I believe she was tired of fighting. And if you believe in Phoenix, or if you've heard of the Phoenix, it's almost like when we see and hear about Viola Desmond now, it's like she's been phoenixed. And for us, the Black Beauty Culture Association, one of our scriptures is Isaiah. And it's Isaiah 61:3. And it reads, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes,
Right.
the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. Now, when we talk about Viola Desmond, you've corrected me on a few times, and you've said, Samantha, it's not like you're doing it in her memory. You're doing it really in her spirit, because it's still alive.
That's right.
So when we talk about phoenixing, we talk about something that's still alive. And Viola Desmond's spirit is still here. So again, it goes back to being hairdressing being mystical. So I thank God for this opportunity too, and I really don't know what God has in store for us in this group, the Black Beauty Culture Association or the Crown of Beauty Institute. But I do know that it needs to be a community effort, and it needs to be, and we talked about this too, we talked about the community being its own advocates and being their own allies. Again, the Bible says, for us, if God is for us, no one can be against us.
That's right.
So we are here today, still fighting, yes, but literally, actually, we're not fighting because God done already fought the war, and we just got to pay attention.
Amen.
And do the work. The beauty culture, the Black beauty culture industry has been hindered or devalued here in Nova Scotia. And I think that there's so much more work to be done. The people that were in positions to actually help it move forward, they didn't. And now it's up to the community.
We have lots of work to do, but we need to do it together. Samantha, thank you very much for sharing, and we'll be back after a moment, folks, with more from Samantha Dixon Slawter of Styles by SD, the Black Beauty Culture Association, and the Crown of Beauty Institute and Association. And finally, Samantha, what do you think Viola Desmond would say to Black entrepreneurs in the beauty and hair industry today? What words of encouragement would she offer to inspire entrepreneurs like yourself?
Well, actually, I want to go back to a visit that we had with her sister, Wanda Robson, in Cape Breton. And the visit there was to actually present Ms. Robinson with the award for the Viola Desmond Crown of Beauty Award that year. And that was in, I believe, in 2019. Yes. When we were ready to leave, Ms. Robinson says to me, she says, my dear, you will continue on my sister work. So that was actually confirmation of my calling. Now, what I believe that Viola Desmond would say to Black beautician is we own beautiful.
Ah, we own beautiful.
We do.
We own beautiful. What a great note for us to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Samantha Dixon Slawter, for the work that you continue to do as a trailblazer, carrying on the work and the legacy of the Black heritage story in Nova Scotia, and specifically Viola Desmond's story. We thank you for your inspiration. We thank you for the affirmation that we own beautiful, and we thank you for being a visionary in this business today. Thank you everyone for joining us on the second episode of the Viola Desmond Community Talks, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful evening.